Math is hard, Pat. You want to know why?
Why?
Because 15 plus 15 is 30. But 16 plus 16 is 32. I could see Pat's face during the intro. I don't think he did. You get that one, Pat? Did you get?
I just didn't like it.
It's
like some of these jokes are bad and like a stupid but technically funny kind of way. That one was just bad.
That one was correct. It's 32 like 30 also, but it's not actually 30. It's 32 because it's number. It's fun with numbers, Pat. We love math over here. Brand Coverage Podcast sponsored by just math in general. Math should be paying us more if that were the case. Folks, welcome back to Brand Coverage. I'm Brandon Carney alongside Pat Gustafson. And Pat, there's a pretty big event this past week, these past couple days. The NFL draft is officially in the books, and we have a lot to talk about from it. Realistically, we could probably turn this into about a 6-hour show if we wanted to, but we are going to keep it into our normally condensed, nice, neat, tidy little hour and a half or so, and we're going to go through lots of things. General, just draft winners. We'll obviously talk about Shadore a little bit. And the bulk of the show will be us getting back to our roots, the biggest fantasy football winners from the draft, that being winners and losers from, guys who are already in the league and guys who are now coming into the league who have the best situations post-draft. So we will get into all that in a second, but first we will kick things off with a quick little Yukon update because we got some very good news.
Love that.
I know you people love our niche little college basketball team. I mean, niche, they're champions, but a lot of people just don't give a fuck about college basketball in general. But Alex Caravan has announced he is coming back for a 4th season as a Yukon Husky, and quite honestly, this might make Yukon the preseason either number 2 or number 3. I don't know. This team and roster.
Purdue and Houston look real tough.
They're pretty tough, but I'll take our lineup against anybody with Caravan back. Like, this is a loaded squad. So just wanted to give a quick little update there. Shout out Alex Caravan. Thank you for giving another year of your life to the Husky faithful. We are excited to welcome you back.
Thank you for fearing a job application, Alex. I can relate to that on a spiritual level.
Listen, he's gonna be parading around the NBA and its surrounding leagues when he decides to go. It's just gonna probably be one of the two-way situations. It's the beautiful thing about this landscape of college basketball. I mean, there's a lot of things that are wrong with it too, but it also incentivizes guys who are borderline like him, who you might never really hear from again, to come back for an extra year of college, because he is literally going to make more at Yukon this season than he would, on a two-way contract with the G League. So happy to have you back, Alex. We are very excited for next season. Now, let's get into the draft stuff, Pat. I figure it makes the most sense just to start off with reactions to our own teams. I'll let you go first, Pat, because we had you, we brought you on for the live stream. We brought you on via phone call. We had you come in via satellite to the live stream to react to the Raiders getting Genty, because it took a pretty particular set of circumstances, I think, for them to end up with Ashton Genty, because I don't know if that Jags trade, doesn't happen. I don't know if Genty's available to the Raiders at 6. I would imagine the Jags probably take him at 5, but the Browns, once they went back to 5 in the trade with the Jags, they were not interested for some reason in Ashton Genty. So how are we feeling, Pat? Are we on cloud 9 here with getting the man himself?
We're on cloud 10. First of all, in the moment, I was flustered, but had I paid attention, been more locked in, I would have pretended to be like a Mike Francesa caller and been like, oh, hey, Mike, first time listener, long time caller.
Right.
But hey, Mike, I want to slap your butt cheeks, but have you ever seen that clip of it? I am ecstatic about the Ashton Genty thing. And that was the thing when I saw the trade at first. My first thought was like, oh my God, incredible. But then it's like, wait. Do the Browns want him?
Yeah,
do the Browns just not want to take him at 2?
Yeah.
And so, I felt better. I felt better about the Browns being there than the Jags.
Yeah.
So, when that pick got made, the excitement quickly shifted to if these assholes fuck this up.
Yeah,
if these assholes fuck this up. And they didn't. They didn't. Yep. And I think they had a really interesting draft, is the way I'll put it. And the way I'll kind of put it as interesting is that, if this was the old Raiders brigade, I would be shitting my pants scared. But the fact that this is now Pete Carroll, this is a new direction, because they took some interesting shots here. We talked about Tommy Melhot. Someone in the comments on YouTube said that you said it correctly. I forgot how you said it, but
I said Malott and I said Mellet. I'm guessing Malott feels like the right, but I don't fucking know. It's one of those.
We'll go with Malott. I like him a lot. Boo. Okay.
Boo.
But like a quarterback going to wide receiver, a cornerback who has started 7 career games as a cornerback. Oh boy. Darian Porter, that's his name. Yep. Kid went to Iowa State as a wide receiver and is a special teams ace. And that's just the kind of stupid pick in theory that the old Raiders regime would have made. But with this, it's like, okay. It's like, yeah, like Patrick Graham's a great defensive coordinator. Pete Carroll's a great defensive mind. And this kid clearly has insane upside. I was watching the coverage of this pick live, and that was basically what they said was the upside on this was crazy. But they addressed their needs. They went heavy at wide receiver, love Jack Beck. I don't think it was necessarily like a top 5 best, performance here, but I'd say it was right outside of it. Like I've seen a lot of A's and A minuses, and I think that's justified.
Yeah, I think they did pretty well. I think this was a draft overall, and I mean, we'll talk about it when I'll quickly mention, the overall draft winners before we get into the real fantasy analysis, but like this didn't feel like a draft where any one team really royally fucked up. There wasn't any one team that I came away like, you guys, that was a really bad draft. Like, what are you guys doing? I mean, obviously, you can pick and choose on individual teams like, oh, you should have targeted this position more, that position more. But this was overall a draft where I felt like everyone did fairly well, and the Raiders included in that. I actually think the Raiders did above average as well. I think that A grade that you're seeing around places is absolutely appropriate. The Patriots, Pat, I am utterly thrilled with our draft. The first pick was exactly as expected and planned with Will Campbell. I was very excited to see them not overthink that one. I mean, granted, would I have been upset if they took Ashton Genty? No, because that's fun and that's sexy. But Will Campbell is the right pick. I loved hearing his interview when he got picked. He was like, I'm willing to fight and die for my quarterback. I'm like, oh, that's my fucking boy right there. That's my left arms. That's my left tackle right there. And then outside of the Will Campbell pick, the Patriots, I felt like, so I mentioned this before, I've curated my X timeline to have quite a lot of people that I think know a lot about ball. And basically everyone the Patriots drafted throughout the draft were guys that either in the hours leading up or the days leading up to that pick, they just loved all the guys we picked. Not because the Patriots picked them, but they were like, oh, if they get this guy, it's going to be a steal. This guy's a sneaky good player in the draft. Kyle Williams, Joshua Farmer, Braden Swinson, all those guys, I heard that sentiment to some effect. And then you add getting a guy like Travion Henderson in the second round, which I didn't really expect. I am not upset at all because, Ramondre Stevenson had some fumbling issues last year, and Antonio Gibson is there behind him, and just those guys are both solid, capable backs, but Travion Henderson is the kind of guy that can get to a different level as a running back. He is touted as the best pass-protecting running back in the entire class, and just to come out of college in a long time in the last several classes. And considering we were really only, we were only able to address one part of the line with some high draft capital, that being Will Campbell. We did take a center later on and another tackle in the 7th round, but considering our offensive line woes in general, I am very excited to have a running back that can also, pick up some pass rushers here and there for Drake May, on top of just having that sort of 3-down skill set. So completely thrilled with what the Patriots did. I was happy with what the Patriots did last year, which is why I hesitate to be like, my analysis of the Patriots draft is any spot on. But I think last year I was just happy with the positions we targeted. I was more so coping about the players we actually targeted, because last year I was not thrilled about the Jalen Polk pick over some of the receivers that were available. This year it felt like name-wise and player-wise, we really targeted a lot of the guys that I would have wanted to see us draft. So I guess Mike Vrabel really did just have a gun up to Elliott Wolf's head the entire draft, because I don't know how we nailed this draft seemingly so well compared to last year. But the rebuild and the retool is fully underway in New England. I'll say this much: this draft really puts the bow on the fact that I am excited to watch this football team next year, which last year, despite me relatively liking the draft because we addressed the positions I felt like we needed, including, Drake May being first and foremost, I was not excited to watch the Patriots to start last season, at least, because Drake May wasn't playing and we just didn't have much else around him. But this year, I'm genuinely excited. I think we can be a pretty good team, and I think siphoning off one of those wild card spots is not out of the question if everything breaks right. So I'm going in with high hopes. I am going in with maybe not high expectations, but at least some optimism here, and that's really all I can ask for. The biggest headline from the draft, Pat: Shadore Sanders.
What about him?
Utter nothing. I think he had a weird suit on or something. No, Shadore Sanders utter tumble and fall. And I remember we had a viewer question after last week's show that was like, what would be the fun, or maybe it was during, because it was all viewer questions. What would be the funniest thing that could happen in the draft in terms of content for you? And I said Shadore Sanders falling out of the first round. Little did I fucking know that he would fall out of not just the first, but also the second, third, and fourth rounds before finally being selected by the Browns in the fifth round. One of the craziest things I can remember seeing in the draft in a long time, not because I felt like this was some great player that everybody was passing on, but because it was a real, just interesting look at how media portrayed Shadore and reacted to the situation. Because I'll say this,
dear.
What Mel Kiper did was flat out embarrassing. Like, for Mel Kiper to get visibly angry for 2 days about this was fucking embarrassing.
After Jalen Miller got drafted, he invoked the names of Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in his rant about Shadore Sanders.
I started tuning them out.
And granted, I think the Browns got a really good value there. And with that QB room, I wouldn't be surprised if he even starts a game this year. Because you'd think, who would probably be more NFL ready, him or Dylan Gabriel? It's probably Shadore. But the meat writing by Mel Kiper was unbelievable. To say that a guy who said he would have retired when Jimmy Clausen was not a great NFL quarterback, is still out here thinking people take his word as gospel. I mean, the guy puts in endless hours of research and whatnot, but I don't think anyone truly respects the opinions that derive from that. But it was absolutely and you could tell night 2, they kind of told him to pipe down. Because it was pretty tame on night 2. And then, again, a little more rightfully so on day 3, he started getting angrier again. But just to say that, like, the NFL doesn't assess pocket quarterbacks. Look at Tom Brady. It's like, look at who?
Yeah.
And he's like, I liked Ryan Leaf more than Peyton Manning. And it's like, who? Like, come
it's not a flex. What do you mean?
Like, come on. Like, again, I think Mel has a better chance of looking good in this situation. That, if anything, Shadore, we may look back and say, like, all right, this kid should have at least gone in the second or third. But it just still, how it was, how he looked was just awful. It's like, I feel like we no longer have the need for Mel Kiper with guys like Matt Miller. Louis Riddick is fantastic. Like, we just don't need him anymore.
Society has progressed past the need for Mel Kiper. Yeah.
Todd.
It was just really cringy to see a man get so angry about something that he's only angry because he's wrong. Like, he's not angry at all these NFL franchises for, why are you being so dumb and passing on this guy who's obviously really good? Buddy, 32 teams don't agree with you. Like, and whether he ends up outplaying this evaluation is a different story. But the fact is, you are the mock draft guy. You are the guy that is supposed to be telling the public what could potentially happen in this draft. And he took it as a personal slight that this was a guy he had maybe all the way up until draft day. I don't remember if he ever bumped him down from third. I think he might have put him at number 9 to the Saints in his final mock. But this was a guy that you had all this process as your number 1 quarterback. Number 1 quarterback. You're just butthurt that every team in the NFL said, hey, no. And I think that is just a level of a lack of awareness of the situation that was just really, really hard to watch, because you listen to some of these other analysts and just people around the league, and it's been coming out over the last week or so that, like, no team liked Shadore that much. No team had him that high on their board. Supposedly the Giants did up until the interview with him and, meeting with him and learning more about him. And I don't know. It's just a bad look overall. But as far as Shadore is concerned, now this is a clean slate for him. We'll see if he can kind of beat the allegations of being this incredibly cocky, pompous guy that tanked his draft stock because he apparently tanked draft interviews. But this was a weird situation, and one that I don't think we'll see for a while, where a guy's stock was just completely inflated to this degree past what NFL teams actually thought of him. So that was the biggest headline of the draft overall, for better or for worse.
The only headline, I think.
I mean, it is content gold. I have a video coming out about the Browns QB room tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. That one should be fun. Moving on to some just overall draft winners before we get into the fantasy analysis, because I am ready to sink my teeth into that. I'm very excited. Overall draft winners, I've just identified a few teams. Obviously, the Patriots, call me biased if you want. I think we fucking nailed it. The Falcons, I really like what they did because they addressed their pass rush, which was a complete 180 from last year where they really needed it, didn't address it, got Michael Penix, which now looks like that was incredibly necessary because Kirk was trash. That just brings into question their Kirk evaluation, which is a different story. So they addressed the pass rush pretty well. The Ravens, I thought, really bolstered their defense. Malachi Starks being the main get there. The Raiders, Pat, I wanted to give a shout out to. I like what they did. I think the Genty pick was smart.
To that list. You didn't have them on your list.
Did you? Okay, good. Well, either way,
I added them in the middle to make it seem like it wasn't me, and it worked.
That's very clever. I was looking at it. I was like, I don't really remember putting him there, but I do love the Genty pick, so that must be why I did this 6 hours ago. No, Pat put him there. Either way, Pat, I still like what the Raiders did, so fair enough. The Bears, I think they just are continuing to load up Ben Johnson with more weapons. Fucking Colston Loveland and Luther Burden just now an embarrassment of riches for a team that already had some pretty good offensive weapons. We got to see what they're going to do at the running back position, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but that is a lot of good players for a offensive whiz like Ben. The Denver Broncos, I am a big fan of what they did in the draft. Jahdae Barron seemed like he fell a few spots further than I would have maybe expected, but RJ Harvey in the second round is going to be a fantasy darling, I think, for both redraft and dynasty. So the Broncos, nice job there. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars. They gave up some assets to go up and get Travis Hunter, but I said this on the draft stream, and I maintain this. If there is going to be a team from the Jags and Browns trade that regrets what they did, it's going to be the Browns. It's not going to be the Jaguars. I think there is a much better chance that Travis Hunter ends up the best player from this draft, and the Browns say, oh, fuck, why did we willingly give up the opportunity to draft that guy? Now, they got a good haul. I'm not saying they didn't. The Browns got a good number of draft picks. They are trying to, rebuild and regroup after this incredibly failed Deshaun Watson trade that set them back literal years. So they're trying to maybe accelerate that process, but I just don't know that we're going to look back on this in 3 years and say it was worth it if Travis Hunter turns out to be the guy that we think Travis Hunter can be.
Yeah, and I think for us fantasy football lovers, the fact that our boy Liam Cohen came out and said they're mainly focusing on offense.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. I thought this was kind of going to be a case of him predominantly playing defense, and we wouldn't know how mixed in offensively he would be, which would have been a nightmare fantasy-wise. But the thing is, we're going into this knowing that he's seemingly going to play offense like a normal wide receiver would, maybe with, albeit a little less because of the defense, with some defense thrown in. So that's fantastic. I mean, we're going to talk, Bran. You told me you have your dynasty draft ongoing. Yep. My dynasty rookie draft is Thursday, so we're going to have a lot of talk about where we see these rookies kind of falling this year and beyond.
Yeah, I had the 106 in my dynasty rookie draft. I did not end up with a chance to get Travis Hunter. Fell a little further.
Did you get the chance to go with?
it's
you didn't take him in the first round.
No, I didn't. It's not. This isn't going to make me look good because it's going to look like a purely biased pick. But he was the best player available. I got Travion Henderson.
See, that's a good pick though.
At 106, and I'm a Ramondre Stevenson owner in that league, and Ramondre was fucking DOA in my lineup. So I was like, okay, I need to get this guy, and there was really no one better available. I was hoping that maybe somebody would, or that a few people would overthink the Travis Hunter thing, and I could snag him. But no, I did get boot scootin' tootin' in the second round though. I got him, and then I made my third pick was Jaden Higgins. So I've made 3 picks so far.
That's nice.
And yeah, I'm quite happy with them. But speaking of boot scooting tooting, Pat, we'll get into him in a little bit. Let's get into some player-specific winners, losers of the NFL draft, because we've got guys whose stock ended up not getting hurt the way we thought it might. And then we got some guys whose stock did end up getting hurt when maybe we didn't expect it or thought there was a chance but kind of just hoped it wouldn't happen. So starting with the winners.
By the way, I'm still here. I just have a nosebleed.
Oh, that's my Pat turns his camera off. It's just because he's bleeding everywhere. That's fine. Again, these are guys who we thought might be at risk of losing work to new competition just based on their circumstances on their team. It seemed like there might be an opening. Seemed like we weren't sure how confident their team was in them. Whatever the circumstances may be, but they did not lose any theoretical work because their team just didn't invest much into that position. Now, keep in mind, now that the draft is over, free agency should get moving again pretty soon here because teams are going to see what positions they missed out on in the draft and then probably get some of these higher end guys off of the free agent board here in the next month or so. You would think, J.K. Dobbins, Keenan Allen, even Nick Chubb, although he's only really has one leg left. Like, these guys are going to be guys who are on teams in the next couple months. So some of this stuff could change. Some of these guys' stocks could still take a hit by virtue of a team bringing in a different veteran to take some work away. But for now, these are the theoretical winners of just the 3 days of the draft. Starting with the guy who, look, this guy was obviously going to be a great fantasy asset no matter what, but he maintained an absolute stranglehold on the wide receiver room he's in, and that is CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys, we thought there was a pretty good chance they were going to draft a second wide receiver. Even if they did, that wouldn't have really knocked CeeDee's draft stock at all, but I do think it's worth pointing out that this room right now is just CeeDee Lamb and insert fart noise here. So
Jalen Tolbert.
I think CeeDee Lamb, assuming Dak Prescott is fully healthy next year, Pat, I think CeeDee Lamb has as good a case as anybody to be the wide receiver 1 next season. Now, Jamar Chase is going to be who's drafted as the wide receiver 1, and rightfully so. But CeeDee Lamb, no competition, good quarterback, just a situation that feels very safe as long as Dak, again, can stay healthy. So CeeDee Lamb, certainly one of those winners. We thought there was a chance the Cowboys could draft a receiver in the first round. They ended up taking a guard. So CD is very safe.
Kind of in general as well, like, what the hell were the Cowboys doing? Like, they drafted. They
wanted another lineman named Tyler.
They drafted their obligatory Tyler, which is a fine pick, but it's more so they didn't take a single wide receiver or running back. Like, they're really moving forward.
They got running backs, but they got him
Williams
late. Yeah,
and Miles Sanders. It's like maybe one of these running back, this running back they took could emerge, but. This was we'll talk about how many great running back options there are and how many great wide receivers there were, and they just didn't do it. And to kind of touch more on Lamb, I think his unspectacular year last year, which a lot came in part due to Cooper Rush for most of it.
Understandably so.
The fact that right now Fantasy Pros has him 6th overall, which could be phenomenal value. Because like you said, also the guy still is a freak. Like, he still had a couple games where you're like, yep, that's CeeDee Lamb. Get Dak Prescott back. Be the only guy worth a damn in that wide receiver room. And yeah, we're looking at a guy who could potentially finish the year as a top 2 wide receiver.
Yeah, he's a guy who, with me sitting at, officially now, Pat, the 6th pick in our draft. In Pat and I's fantasy league, we do officially have our draft order now. Pat actually ended up lucking up to number 3, where I think he might still just take Ashton Genty. I am officially at number 6, and 6 very much feels like a sweet spot where CeeDee Lamb is on the table for me. So I am
where he was last year somehow, or 7, wherever I got him somehow.
Yeah, so I would be excited to get him. Again, his stock just not that it would have taken any major damage anyway, but it is just the same situation right now, minus Brandon Cooks there in the Dallas receiver room. I guess they may have big hopes for Jonathan Mingo after all. Another winner.
Boy,
this is one whose value could have taken a pretty big hit, but didn't. It's a guy who I'm not super excited to be talking up again, but I don't really have a choice. It's Calvin Ridley. The Tennessee Titans got their quarterback, obviously, with Cam Ward and the first overall pick, but they did not spend high draft capital on a weapon for him. The highest drafted receiver they had was, hope I'm pronouncing this right, Chimere Dike in the 4th round. That is how I looked up the pronunciation. I think I got that right. Highest draft capital spent on a receiver was a 4th rounder for the Tennessee Titans. So Calvin Ridley is going to enter next season as the clear undisputed wide receiver 1 for a quarterback that we, believe is going to be able to at least sling the ball around. possibly on a pretty bad team, which will create maybe some
Possibly.
garbage time for Calvin Ridley. You're probably a pretty bad team.
Probably.
Let me pull up the rest of the Titans depth chart here because I don't remember who they replaced.
They don't even have our boy Nick Westbrook-Akina anymore.
I know. I was
going
to say
Tyler Lockett.
They do have
is
Tyler
one of the
Lockett.
non-draft signings that happened this week.
They did acquire Boomer Tyler Lockett. I think they did that. I could be wrong. I think they did that after the day 1 of the draft, but like before day 2. I don't know.
That is so Titans, man.
Like, we didn't get a receiver on day 1, which we knew, and then they just signed Tyler Lockett. Old receivers go to die in Tennessee,
Hopkins,
so I'm not expecting a lot from Tyler Lockett. Julio Jones
Randy
was there.
Moss.
Julio Jones was there. Andre Johnson, I think, was there.
Yes, he was.
Traylon Burks is still listed as a starter in Tennessee. So Calvin Ridley is going to get everything he can handle. Now they also did draft Elik Ayamanor, I believe. Is that how it's pronounced? Another guy who like my ball knower Twitter seems to really like, but isn't necessarily going to get a lot of work right away. Calvin Ridley, Pat. Yeah, I guess he's going to be the fucking guy in Tennessee, and I don't know where that's going to land his ADP come fantasy time, but it's a guy we can't ignore as much as I would really like to ignore.
Yeah.
Another winner, Pat. This one I know you were excited about just because of what he did for you last year. This was one that
Dynasty too, man.
I do too, actually, in that same Dynasty league, so I'm not upset. This was one that I'll be honest, gun to my head, I would have said, yeah, the Bengals are going to spend at least 4th rounder on a running back. They didn't. The highest drafted running back for the Bengals, they did get Taj Brooks in the 6th round. That was their only investment in the position. So Chase Brown, after emerging in the second half of last year, appears to have this backfield to himself on what we believe will be one of the, if not the highest scoring offenses in the NFL based on need alone. The Bengals did rework Zach Moss's contract, so he will be back. But again, that's one of those situations where, especially after seeing how it played out last year, that's a good thing for Chase Brown, that they are bringing back competition that is not real competition and is a guy that Chase Brown actively beat out last year. You know, we're talking about even before Zach Moss got hurt, Brown was outplaying him with the touches he received. So Chase Brown currently looks like a really good fantasy pick here at running back. Like, what round is this guy going? Like, he's going pretty fucking high.
I'm a little upset, like, thinking about that. I'm like, why did I pick 3? It's like I could have went way back and gotten my boy. Mm-hmm. Or, gone back, gotten my boy maybe after the turn of the 1st round, but
I don't think he's going to be a 1st round pick, although I could justify it based on this. I imagine he'll be more of an early 2nd. Let me see where Fantasy Pros consensus has him. I mean, it's a little early right now.
Pulled up right now. He is
29th right now. So the trust in Chase Brown is not quite there yet, I guess.
Don't let him fall to me.
I mean, he's, again, a guy who feels like an ideal pick for me in my spot, but in the 2nd round from the 6th overall spot. So I would certainly consider him as the RB1 in this Bengals offense that needs to score a bajillion points to win games.
And
so
it was either Zach Taylor or their GM that came out and said that we saw what Chase Brown could do last year. And that seems like that, combined with spending no draft capital on a running back, shows that they believe 100% in this kid. And they should. And again, as a owner and redraft last year and as a Dynasty owner, I could not be any happier. Because like you said, I probably would have agreed that, gun to my head, I was scared shitless.
Yeah, so he's definitely a winner of the NFL draft just by them not drafting running backs. Similar vibe here. James Conner and Trey Benson, I think, are both pretty big winners of the draft because the Cardinals did not draft any more running backs in any round to compete with them. So behind them is still Emari DeMercado, Michael Carter, which means a couple things. One, this could be yet another year of James Conner when I am just trying to prey on this man's downfall every year and I keep being wrong. And or Trey Benson is a guy that they do believe in, either, whether he gets a larger, more than 50% workload this year, I'm not sure, but does seem like a guy that they are confident in planning to be their guy for the future once James Conner, if and when this man does fall off.
I'm mad though because I just looked up where Benson's ranked, and fucking Tootin is the first guy right above him, and I'm not happy.
Okay, I'm going to debut the sound effect that I've got
Oh,
from
no.
my man Bayshul Tootin because he's going to be a guy that we just meme to death on this show. Not just meme, though. He's going to be the best running back in football.
Fuck. I thought it was gonna be more of a fart kind of thing. Than
No, this is Timmy Toot Toot from Ned's
Oh,
Declassified
it is Timmy
School
Toot Toot.
Survival Guide.
You kids don't know.
So I could follow it up with, but I'm not gonna because Bayshul Tootin is not a fart noise. He is simply my Lord and Savior. So yeah, Trey Benson, a guy that I think has decent stock this year still.
It at least means that they are, granted, James Conner's been pretty healthy the last few years, but they at least believe in Trey Benson to be the contingency plan should something happen to James Conner here. But yeah, I think if all else fails here, we're looking at another year of at least the workload from James Conner. You know, we may not see him do what he did 2 years ago, but Fantasy Pros has him 55th overall. And again, for the volume you're getting, hopefully we're seeing Arizona be a little better this coming year in, you know, with another year in Drew Pretzing's offense. But so like 55, that's pretty good art. That's pretty good dead zone value. Again, this is going to change like
that's where this man lives. That's
months.
what James Conner lives in the running back dead zone, and he
is the
outperforms
dead
it.
zone.
He outperforms it every year. And you know, I don't know that I've mentioned this on the show before, but there's a player I had this experience with in the past, Pat, where I kept writing them off year after year, knowing that I was probably going to be wrong, but just refusing to get burned by him the one time I invested in him. You know who it was? It was Marshawn Lynch at the, like, not at the end of his career, but basically once he turned like 29 or so, I was like, look,
you hate old people, yeah.
I was like, I'd rather be a year too early off the train than a year too late. I don't want to get burned. James Conner's that guy. I think I just have to stick to my guns at this point because eventually I'm going to be right. And Pat, if that wasn't all enough, he's turning 30 this year. I mean, fucking pick out a casket for the guy. He's done. His age starts with a 3 at the running back position. I mean, he's toast. He has to be. It's over.
He's RB 20 right now on Fantasy Pros. I think that is.
Oh, he's going to finish as RB 13 again.
He's going to finish ahead of that. You could very well see him finishing ahead of that. That said, looking at all these guys ahead of him, though, I'd say all but like maybe 1 or 2 of them, I would confidently say right now I'd rather have than James Conner. So it seems appropriate.
James Conner just always has the risk factor baked in that he is going to fall off, and then the man just simply refuses. I got to give him credit. Another double backfield that didn't get anybody really added to it, the Washington Commanders, Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. Now, we did not really hear glowing reviews about this backfield from the Commanders throughout this offseason, at times not even really referring to these guys by name. It was just kind of, you know, we'll see what the backfield looks like. And then all they did,
and the shot guy.
the old guy and the shot guy, yes. Sounds like a WWE tag team. The only guy they added to this backfield was 7th rounder Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So but for all intents and purposes, the Commanders added nobody to this backfield, and they are going to be relying on B-Rob and Eckler. And in an offense led by Jaden Daniels, like, there's going to be some points to go around. Obviously, you've got the quarterback that's going to take some for himself, but these are 2 guys who, I mean, Pat, they were both startable at points last year.
I was going to say Eckler before he had a pretty nasty concussion, wasn't it, right? That kept him out for a few weeks. He was looking pretty solid before that, especially.
He had the juice again, man. He just didn't have the workload.
Exactly. And, you know, Robinson, we've seen good things from him in the past. I'm not completely sold on him as a player in general, but like you said, for fantasy purposes, if he's still the lead back in what should be a good offense where they are only going to get better, you'd think, in the second year with the whole Jane Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury group here, there's no reason to believe that just won't keep getting better. And as long as Brian Robinson's getting the bulk of the carries there, you've got to keep rolling with it, even if you have doubts on the player.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's been the hardest thing for me to like come to terms with as a fantasy player, is not writing off these guys just because I don't think they're that good. Because I have to acknowledge the situation some of these guys are in, and Brian Robinson is absolutely one of those guys. I'm right there with you. I don't think he's that great of a running back, but if this is what the backfield looks like come week 1, I mean, no one's taken his work. Like, there's not going to be somebody that pops up out of nowhere and steals the RB1 job from Brian Robinson, because it's we love Austin Eckler. We know he deserves a role, but like, he's not going to take RB1 duties from the guy. So I think if you're looking at just a solid like floor of flex production, or maybe even RB2 if you really load up on receivers or other positions early, I think Brian Robinson's a guy who, as it stands right now, is a pretty safe bet. Moving on to another split backfield that I think dodged a bullet here, but, remains to be seen, because this guy was really productive in college at one point. Devon Achane and Jalen Wright. We thought the Dolphins might add a running back, specifically one that works a little bit better between the tackles than Achane, or than especially Achane, but also Jalen Wright, who didn't really do much in his limited work last year. The Dolphins only drafted Ollie Gordon in the 6th round. Now, Ollie Gordon, Pat, flashback a couple years ago, was in the Heisman race and was one of the most productive running backs in all of college football. So I am not sitting here willing to say that they drafted an absolute nobody who can't maybe siphon some work off in this backfield. However, given what we came in expecting, the fact that the Dolphins, again, draft capital matters in just how much they believe in the guys they have. The fact that they went in and only spent a 6th rounder on the position tells me they're pretty happy with the guys that they have. So I am once again pretty comfortable with Devon Achane as, at worst, an early 2nd round pick.
Yeah, I like this a lot for Jalen Wright, in the sense that, one, we've seen Achane struggle with injuries, as well as Mike McDaniel liking to mix in a second running back. And at the very least, it seems like they're comfortable with Jalen Wright, for the beginning of the year at least, slotting into that Raheem Mostert role. And, should we see something happen to Achane, you're looking at another, again, Dolphins offense is going to be slinging it, doing everything, where it's a good place to be. If we're looking at redraft value this year, at the end of the day, he's still a backup. So, he's not going to go too high, but in the standalone value may not be there, but really good handcuff potential now.
Yeah, and I think this Dolphins backfield is also a little less scary to invest in now, because the Dolphins have seemingly competent backup quarterbacks, to where, look, Zach Wilson's not very good. Quinn Ewers is a complete unknown, but I feel pretty comfortable saying they're better than Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley, I think is what they threw out there last year.
Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley.
Just to the level that the offense wouldn't be a complete dumpster fire should something happen to Tua again. Now, we are obviously hoping for Tua's health. If he stays healthy, then to the moon for this backfield, because we know what Mike McDaniel can do for running backs. But this definitely maintains the value for Devon Achane and a speculative Jalen Wright in the late rounds if he does have more of a sophomore breakout, which I think is more than possible.
Took him in Dynasty last year, and I am very happy. Very happy.
Absolutely. We got a weird one here, Pat, because of all the players on this list that I expected somebody to get added competition.
Speaking of preying on a guy's downfall.
Like I mentioned, Chase Brown, I pretty strongly expected the Bengals to spend higher draft capital on a backup for him. Didn't happen. Even more so, I expected the Chicago Bears to spend higher draft capital on competition for motherfucking DeAndre Swift, who, as we sit here, oh my God, as we sit here, is the unquestioned RB1 for a Ben Johnson offense with a much improved offensive line. The only back the Bears added in this draft was Kyle Monangai in the 7th round. Now, to be fair, 7th round running back out of Rutgers has worked out in the past. Just ask Kansas City. But if we're being realistic, 7th round running backs have a very low hit rate. So again, the Bears basically added nobody. I am so baffled by this that I am borderline positive they are going to sign somebody or trade for somebody to add to this backfield, because I just don't see them. Yeah, I don't see them going into the season with Swift and Johnson as their RB1 and 2. I don't.
Because I was going to say, out of the guys they would go and sign, I don't know if any of them would really make a massive impact. Maybe J.K. Dobbins is probably the number one guy that would cut into Swift's workload, but then obviously a trade could potentially throw a real curveball into that. I'm shocked too. Like the fact that Ben Johnson still showed, hey, I'm going all in on offense.
Yeah.
Shockingly taking Colston Loveland and Luther Burden with the top 2 picks, when, granted, those are two great players, especially Loveland going him over Tyler Warren was the most surprising thing of it all. But to say that they went and did those picks they didn't necessarily need to really beef up this offense, which could be really good here, that he's comfortable with DeAndre Swift as the lead back, is saying something here. That, that this must be... We talked about this. I think they overlapped in Detroit very briefly. Ben Johnson and DeAndre Swift.
So which is the funny part, because Ben Johnson spent one season as the offensive coordinator for DeAndre Swift, following which they shipped him out. So
yeah, they didn't use him as much as we thought they would.
No, I believe I was looking at the numbers the other day. He had like 500 rushing yards on the season. Now, I think he missed some time with injury, but this was not a case where like Ben Johnson's reunited with a guy who he loved and who had incredible success with him. Now, I'm confused. The only thing I can think of, like while saying it out loud, is that I guess their priorities could be a little different because they have a quarterback that he feels can move a little bit. Maybe he doesn't feel the need to whereas they felt the need to surround Jared Goff, right? More of a statue in the pocket with really good backfield to make up for it. Maybe because Caleb's a better athlete, he doesn't feel as motivated to highly invest in the backfield. I don't fully buy that still. I think they are going to get a running back from somewhere. I don't know who it's going to be, but I would bet someone a large sum of money that this is not all the Bears have in their backfield come week one, because it doesn't feel Ben Johnson-y to me. So we'll see what happens here.
And I guess this is an easy way to kind of transition into the losers, because this is kind of a question now is it Cole Kmet and Rome Odunze that are the losers because them drafting Colston Loveland and Luther Burden with two of their highest picks? Or is it just the fact that those two aren't going to be that big of factors coming into year one? Because I think when they didn't go back and get Keenan Allen, everyone was so excited for Rome Odunze. Yeah. That like we saw some good things, didn't get the, necessarily the participation to put up big numbers, but this was going to be his chance at a Ben Johnson offense, and they just went and they poured water all over that. And same thing with Cole Kmet, the fact that, again, I'm a little more concerned for him from the perspective that, sure, he's highly paid, but, we're talking Rome Odunze was a top 10 pick last year. We're talking about Cole Kmet here, who is not a Ben Johnson guy, who, does not have that kind of sparkle that Rome Odunze has. I think it's just going to make this whole team a fucking mess.
Yeah, I agree. Again, it's a situation, Pat, where I do think a weapon, a primary weapon, a favorite of Caleb Williams, a scheme favorite of Ben Johnson will emerge, but it's going to be fucking hard to figure out who it's going to be.
Funny. Bears depth chart. They still have Eddie Royal.
I think they signed Olamide Zaccheaus. So we could go with him.
We're going with who's funny on here? A lot of funny guys on here. Tyler Scott, congratulations.
Perfect.
Miles Boykin.
Oh my God, he's still alive? Okay.
And Devin Duvernay's on this team. What the fuck is going on here?
I think somebody's going to emerge. I'm really optimistic on this Bears offense in general. I think, LOL Bears has been a thing for so long, but I will stake my claim that I think this offense at the very least is going to be really good next year. And somebody will emerge. We don't fucking know who it's going to be. I would offer this advice as of right now. Like, if you're playing in multiple fantasy leagues, draft Rome Odunze in one, draft DJ Moore in the other, draft Luther Burden because it's good. I think it's going to be somebody. I don't think it's going to be, 1 week it's this guy goes crazy and then the next week he's completely dust and the other guy. Like, there will be a little bit of that, but I think a favorite will emerge. I'm with you in that Pat Cole Kmet's dust to me. Like
I've never been huge on him to begin with because that one big breakout he had was with Justin Fields, and you could tell that just him and Justin Fields had a really good connection. So that Caleb Williams coming in kind of took that whole narrative away, and I've just never been thrilled about him in that current position, and this just goes to show the fact that they're willing to spend the 10th pick on the tight end when you've got, in theory, a very solid starting tight end in-house. It's just concerning for a Cole Kmet standpoint.
A guy who was only periodically productive as it was and now has a tight end with top 10 draft capital coming in for the new coaching staff. Exactly. It doesn't look good.
Look what they did with Sam Laporta.
Right, exactly.
Like, look, that's what I mean. Like, it's exactly to say that, like, not only is this a new coaching regime, this is a new coaching regime that threw in a rookie tight end with way less draft capital and showed that kind of success. Like,
Yeah.
It seems like if there's no Cole Kmet here, this is a perfect spot. But there is still a Cole Kmet here.
Yeah, when it comes to tight ends for fantasy football, the one thing we will not tolerate, because you only got to start one. In general, you're only going to really roster one. We're not tolerating tight end timeshares. We're just not. Like, that is not where you're going to find the best value at the tight end position. Even if the Bears offense is one of the greatest shows on turf, Pat, if you're going to take a stab at a Bears tight end, A, it should be Colston Loveland, but B, it should probably be neither. So I for this year, I don't think I'm very interested in a Bears tight end. Receiver-wise, though, we'll see. I think somebody's going to emerge. I think money on the table, I would say it's Roma Dunze. I do still think he's got that year 2 breakout potential. Luther Burden might be a decoy for not for the Bears offense, but for people to miss out on Roma Dunze's breakout. It's kind of where I'm approaching it right now. I like Burden as a player too, but that's just kind of where I would.
If I had to guess, I would say that this is going to hurt Luther Burden more. Like, I think it's more likely that Luther Burden just isn't a factor year 1 than saying like, wow, Roma Dunze really didn't make that leap.
Well, I think he's going to be a part-time player is the thing. Like, if you're looking at guys who are going to play full complement snap shares, like. And that's where them drafting another tight end really muddies things too, because at first, before they drafted Burden, I was like, okay, they're going to run a lot of 12 personnel. They're going to have 2 tight ends out there, and they're going to have DJ Moore and Roma Dunze. Perfect. Nice, clean, best weapons are out there a lot. And then they drafted Burden, and it's like, okay, when's he getting on the field, and who is suffering when he is on the field? Is it going to be Kmet? Is it going to be... And that just kind of makes it messy, where I think Roma Dunze might be one of the more steady, him and DJ Moore, the 2 steadiest pieces of the offense. Yeah. So those will be the guys I'm most invested in out of the Bears. But yes, we transition into the biggest fantasy losers. Obviously, Roma Dunze and Cole Kmet's stocks are at least more in question than they were because of them drafting those weapons. We've got some other incumbent fantasy losers. Harris, Pat. That was fun while it lasted, huh? The idea of Najee Harris being the lead back on this Chargers offense, a team that wants to run the ball, a team that I still really like their offensive potential just in terms of the touchdown share Najee could have found himself in. And then they go and spend their first-round pick on a running back, and I am all but ignoring Najee Harris now.
I'm not going that far. I'm not going that far down the tubes, but had they drafted more of a Jalen Warren-type player, then it would be like, oh, it's just going to be similar to what they were, Najee was like in Pittsburgh, except in a better offense that loves to run the ball as well. But the fact that it's Omarion Hampton in the first round...
That man's fucking huge.
Is what's really, really scaring me. Like, had they taken even some of these guys in the second round, you look at like a guy like RJ Harvey or Caleb Johnson, even had they taken one of those guys, it would have been like,
that's the whole issue. It's a first rounder.
It's like, I could still see Najee, getting a decent, but like, they still went out and signed Najee, so you've got to think he's still going to be involved. But again, I just think this again is nasty. I think this is just going to be nasty.
I think, yes, you're right. Najee's going to be involved. But I think if anybody is going to emerge as like the back to own in this backfield, Pat, I would just be borderline shocked if it was Najee Harris. Like, he's a guy who, we talked him up before because we thought he was the only guy in this backfield. Now, with the context of them drafting a running back in the first round, Najee Harris is on a 1-year, $4 million deal. That's not going to be a guy that they are like giving, what's the goddamn word? The big load, big bull
lion share,
lion share, yeah, whatever.
Do not
most
big load. I want Jim Harbaugh's big load in those khakis.
Fuck, I don't know. Lion share is correct, but there's a different word I'm thinking of. I don't know. They're not going to give him they're not going to give him that many carries to where he is going to just volume his way to fantasy relevance like we thought maybe he could before the pick. So now you've got a guy who, much like how we talked about Brian Robinson, Pat, I don't really care for the talent, and now he has massive, literally massive, Omarion Hampton's the fucking Hulk competition in this backfield. I'm not going to be drafting any Najee Harris. I will draft a little Omarion Hampton because I do think, again, you're right, Najee's going to be involved, but this is a case where right now I view it as he's just going to make it more annoying for Hampton than it's going to be Najee has weekly value in his own right.
we've talked about endlessly how Najee Harris is like the epitome of a good, not great NFL running back, and a Marion Hampton, way younger, just screams to have that potential to be a great running back way more than Najee Harris does at this point in his career. So yeah, it was fun while it lasted. I personally loved it, and now I am pretty sad.
Somebody said bell cow. That's what I was fucking looking for.
The big load back. Well, let's change the terminology. Let's start a revolution to everyone on Twitter, Instagram. Get big load back going on here.
Big load back. BLB, baby. It's like BBL, but you just kind of switch up the letters. So yeah, big load back. I love it. Another loser from the draft, Pat. Najee Harris's former running mate, Jaylen Warren. This was one we very much expected. We heard the Steelers, talk about, can Najee Harris be a 3-down back, and they were very unconvincingly like, yeah. And we were like, yeah, fucking doubt it, pal. And then they drafted Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round, who is basically the ideal complement to Jaylen Warren. Now, this does not, contrary to the Chargers drafting Hampton and what it did to Najee's value, this does not completely zap Jaylen Warren's value, because Jaylen Warren was already a change of pace, pass catching, complement to the starter. All this does is keep Jaylen Warren basically right where he was last season. Maybe with a few more touches, because, you're looking at a 3rd round rookie in Caleb Johnson. Maybe he's not going to absorb all of Najee's carries right away, but I think he'll get there, and I think ultimately Jaylen Warren is just going to be a flex type of guy on a pretty mid offense.
Even that, like I'm basically taking Jaylen
occasional
Warren
flex, yeah.
In one of those situations where it's like, knock on wood, something were to happen to Caleb Johnson,
right?
That Jaylen Warren would be the big load back in that. I'm gonna say that.
Big load back.
The thing is I am capable of saying shit like that so like seriously and like that. This is gonna become a problem. But if we there is that potential. But yeah, I would have been more shocked than DeAndre Swift had the Steelers not went and taken someone with the capital they did in place of Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, and the other issue with these two backs and why I'm not like necessarily jumping out of my seat to draft either Jaylen Warren or Caleb Johnson.
I think I know the answer.
Arthur fucking Smith.
Oh, I was going to say Mason Rudolph, but
well, that too. There's not a lot of good factors here for the running backs in Pittsburgh, Pat. It's not a lot of good vibes over there.
Oh,
so yeah.
My God. That's Cordero Patterson's music.
Cordero Patterson's about to bust out 12 touches on a random Thursday night game, and we're all going to cry. Another loser, another running back, and this is near and dear to my heart, Ramondre Stevenson, Pat. Another guy who, thanks to this pick, I am just not fucking going near in fantasy anymore. Travion Henderson, very early 2nd-round draft capital now. Ramondre already dealt with his issues last year that kept him off fantasy rosters toward the end of the year because he lost his job to Antonio Gibson. Now, this is kind of just the nail in the coffin, I think. You're going to see him on the field next year, but the fantasy relevance is just not really going to be there. If you're going to invest in any Patriots running back for redraft fantasy, I suggest Travion Henderson because he's either going to take most of the carries or this backfield's going to be ugly for fantasy. I think the latter probably more likely, but I am not investing any stock in Ramondre Stevenson at this point.
Yeah, again, he's been one of those guys that we kind of wanted to be the James Conner type, where it's like, don't love the talent, but the opportunity's there. And just in that Patriots offense from the last couple of years, there just wasn't enough, quality volume for him to be kind of productive based on volume alone. And now that, well, granted, it's still Josh McDaniels. Again, it's like, oh, new Patriots coaching staff, and then you look who the offensive coordinator is, and you're like, never mind. But even if that team does get better with a better line in Drake May under center, now Travion Henderson is here to muck it up, who, like you said before, you said like Antonio Gibson was like a viable running back or something. You gave him like the lightest of compliment, and I made quite the face because no, he is not.
He was our best running back at the end of the year is why I said it.
Whatever you said he was, no, he's not. But Travion Henderson, my point is Travion Henderson is way better than Antonio Gibson.
Antonio Gibson deserves to breathe air, Pat. Anytime a new regime drafts a new running back and that backfield had already had fucking issues, definitely not great for the incumbent. Christian Kirk, Pat, a guy we talked about as a potential sleeper in the Texans receiver room. Not now that they spent 2 picks in the first 3 rounds on receivers. I am pretty much off the Christian Kirk train. They spent a 2nd on Jaden Higgins to go alongside Nico Collins. That is just a big boy receiver duo on the outside. Jaden Higgins is kind of, other than Ted McMillan, the big contested catch type of receiver, and him playing on the opposite side of Nico Collins. CJ can kind of just throw the ball up, and then they drafted Jalen Noel in the 3rd round. Those 2 picks, those 2 investments make me far less interested in spending a dart throw pick on Christian Kirk, who they are paying a decent amount of money. So he's going to be involved as their slot guy, I'm sure, but I don't think week to week fantasy value is going to be there, especially since they didn't really improve their O-line that much. I know they spent the 2nd rounder on it, but we're also banking on this offense being more functional with a good O-line, but I don't know that that's going to happen. So a lot of things working against Christian Kirk now.
Yeah, even though Kirk does do his best work in the slot and will probably be on the field a lot, you've got Nico Collins. Had they maybe not taken Jalen Noel in the 3rd round, it's like, okay, Christian Kirk could still be the 3rd guy in this offense. And, Dalton Schultz is still going to get 3 or 4 targets a game here just to be annoying. Don't draft him either, by the way. I'm sure he'll be way too highly ranked.
Hot Dalton Schultz. No.
Yeah, this does... The thought of Christian Kirk as the number 2 target in a C.J. Stroud-led offense was looking very good. And now that he is 3rd...
That dream's probably dead.
It is dead, but the fact that now not only is he not going to be 2nd, he will, might be like 3rd and a half alongside Noel. So yeah, it's unfortunate there.
It's pretty icky. And then the last of the losers, Pat, maybe the biggest one, Xavier Legette. I did not think the Panthers were going to draft Ted McMillan, but the Panthers had a big body receiver who, came on at the end of last year, started stringing together some good games, and then the Panthers said, you know what we should do? Draft a guy who plays that position better than him. And that's what they did with Ted McMillan. Higher draft capital. I just think, I don't know how you draft Xavier Legette in redraft with any kind of confidence now that the Panthers spent the 8th overall pick on a guy who's going to fulfill that same role on an offense that I'm not confident enough to say, has enough to go around for everybody. The Panthers looked good at the end of last year. They improved, but this isn't a case where, I got to have a Panther on my team. There's going to be guys that suffer, and I think Xavier Legette's probably going to be one of them.
I was going to say, if the big question is, do you think in another year with Bryce Young and Dave Canales at the helm, can this offense be enough to support 2 really solid fantasy pieces? And I think you're probably right that the answer is no. Does that make Legette completely worthless? No, because at the end of the day, we're still looking at a 2nd-year player, first round capital, who is still the number 2 target in an improving offense with some rapport with Bryce Young. But yeah, any thought of him being the number 1 target would have been a lot of fun. It's just kind of, not like a pour on the parade, but it's raining. It's raining at the parade.
It's just, to me, you were having hope that he could take a big step forward next year. And it's even if he takes a step forward, personally, in the sense of he's more comfortable, he is maybe more consistent week to week, I don't think you're going to be able to see a big step forward in the wide receiver 1 potential is probably toast. Any sort of hopes we had for that, just because he's no longer the best wide receiver or highest invested wide receiver on his own team. So that's just a big knock. Okay, let's move on to the rookies themselves, Pat. We're going to go through the running backs, then the wide receivers, then the tight ends. And we're just going to talk...
all in 33 minutes.
We can do it. Talking about all of them, best landing spots based on opportunity. This is essentially just a pseudo ranking for their immediate redraft value and how we feel about these players coming into this season, who has the best combination of, their own personal talent, but also the best landing spot for the best opportunity.
Who's number 1, Brandon?
Pat is just looking like a fucking schoolgirl into the camera right now because of the obvious number 1 for running backs being Ashton Genty, which would have been the case no matter where he got picked. Would have been the case no matter what team drafted him.
No.
But, you're right. I guess if the Ravens drafted him, we might have had to have a fucking talk. Also, just with the Ravens, because no.
Fuck yeah.
The number 1 ranked running back, obviously for redraft value, is Ashton Genty. He's going to a backfield with fucking nobody in it. There are going to be some questions about the O-line and just the offense overall, but this is a volume and talent bet that I think is going to pan out despite some of the mitigating factors surrounding him. Easy number 1. It gets more interesting after that because Ashton Genty is going to be a top 10 at the very worst
One.
redraft pick, possibly top 5 reasonably, possibly top 1 if you're Pat and have the number 1 pick in a league. To me, Pat, the number 2 running back with the best landing spot based on opportunity, the number 2 running back I would draft for fantasy this year is RJ Harvey with the Denver Broncos.
I agree.
I think that landing spot is just beautiful for a few reasons. One, the Broncos obviously needed a running back. We talked about they only have Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime. Sean Payton has been vocal about wanting another back added here that they can lean on. And maybe more important than anything, Pat, RJ Harvey was a guy who had more of a 3rd or 4th round projection or evaluation based on most people's view. And so the fact that the Broncos liked him enough to spend a 2nd rounder on him, like, this is a guy I think is going to have a real impact in year 1. Like, I think the talk of this being a really strong running back class and that manifesting itself in fantasy very early on, I don't think is just smoke. Like, I think it's going to happen. I like RJ Harvey. I think he's got a real chance to be an RB2 for fantasy type of guy. This landing spot is just very, very soft for him. Very nice.
Exactly, and I think the in terms of the situation, in terms of volume, that I would compare him to is Quinshon Judkins in Cleveland, who, by the way, taking a shit without his phone is psychotic behavior in itself, let alone during the NFL draft, especially when you're taking a Cleveland Brown when you're supposed to be talking to the Cleveland Browns. But the big difference there is the opportunity, the fact that RJ Harvey is going to be the big load back in a really good offense, as opposed to Judkins in arguably one of the worst offenses in the league. Judkins will still have his value. I'd still say he's the 3rd or 4th best option here for the rookie running backs going into the year. But the fact that Harvey's going to be in an offense that's only going to get better.
Yeah, exactly. That's another big part of it, is that the Broncos team in general is really just trending the right direction. The offense is trending the right direction, and now they seem to have their running back, at least in terms of the investment. We'll see if he can handle that kind of workload, and we'll see how much, Jaleel McLaughlin and Audric Estime take away. But as of right now, this landing spot is beautiful. I think a lot of people thought the Broncos might spend a 1st rounder on a running back. So once they didn't, it became, all right, which guy are they going to get that this is really going to juice his value more than we thought it might? And that's RJ Harvey. All right, my number 3 back is the guy that I'm sure a lot of people will have as number 2 just because of the draft capital, and it is Omarion Hampton. I am a little iffy on Omarion Hampton just because of where I think he's going to end up going in redraft leagues. I've seen him start to go in like the 4th round or so, where he initially ranked at least, and I'm like, I get it. Like, it's hard for me because I love the Chargers, Pat. I'm a Chargers simp. I love that Jim Harbaugh likes to run the ball like that. But the annoying competition of Najee Harris in year 1 is why I had RJ Harvey above Omarion Hampton, and it's why I'm not overly thrilled that this is where he ended up. If Omarion Hampton ended up on the Broncos, that would be a guy I was targeting. I would be targeting very heavily, but this is kind of just more of a muddy landing spot. Still, though, because of the capital and because of the team he's on, I couldn't put him any lower than 3. I think this is a baseline of the lowest he should be in this sort of ranking.
Yeah, again, if he goes to the Broncos or goes to the Browns or the Cowboys, it's like, whew, or even the Steelers, where it's like he would have definitively, been the lead back over Jalen Warren. Just the fact that Najee Harris is still there, who's at least... And, oh God, now I can't think of the word, and it's not big load either. I guess acclaimed, proven running back. Najee Harris is a proven running back that we've seen. Also, when I yawn into the microphone, everything's all willy-nilly,
because you thought you were muted that time. I knew I wasn't, and I burped anyway, because this is my show.
That's it, I'm taking my shirt. All right, I don't know what that has to do with anything. But yeah, I think with Najee Harris at least being a proven running back takes away from him, which is why I, would say that had Quinshon Judkins been in a better offense, I'd even say I'm almost like him more than Hampton. I don't quite think I'm ready to do that then.
I would agree, which is why I have Quinshon Judkins at number 4 for my 4th best
hard
running
name
back
to say.
redraft.
Quinshon
Judkins?
Hard name to say.
How did for you?
I keep saying Quinshon Judkins. Like I don't know what I'm saying, but I'm saying something.
I don't know what's wrong with you, but you fucking figure it out, pal. Quinshon Judkins, my number 4 running back in terms of, again, all of this is combination of landing spot, talent, draft capital, all that stuff. Just a pseudo redraft ranking. Quinshon Judkins to the Browns. The Browns drafted 2 running backs, but Quinshon Judkins much earlier than his counterpart, Dylan Sampson. So this is a guy who's going to have this backfield, maybe not to himself, but he's going to be the lead guy there. What? Jerome Ford? Yeah, Jerome Ford's
Maybe I
biggest
was
fan
just a year
has
early.
some thoughts.
Maybe I was just a
Yeah, you were just a year early. He's going to break out now that they spent a very early second rounder on a running back. Now Jerome Ford is going to take the league by storm. You're absolutely right. No.
Yep.
Quinshon Judkins, I think the volume's going to be there, Pat. The Browns is where it gets messy. Just the Browns in general. This offense doesn't look to be all that cohesive, productive.
You just put that very nicely.
We don't know who the fucking quarterback's going to be. We'll put it that way. It could be anybody from old man Joe Flacco to problem child Shadore Sanders to somehow got drafted ahead of Shadore Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, to tiny hands Kenny Pickett, who I believe is the Vegas favorite to start for them right now, which I would have put him firmly third if I was making my own odds, but I don't know. Maybe I should learn from that. So Quinshon Judkins is going to have, a good scheme with Kevin Stefanski, a large portion of the volume, but just how good is the offense going to be? That's the question. That's why I have him at number 4. At number 5, different sort of situation, Pat. Travion Henderson, the other Ohio State back. He is stepping into a situation that I think is certainly trending more of the right way than the Browns is, but he has a little bit more competition that he's going to have to stave off. I think he will emerge as the RB1 in this backfield, even if it's not immediately in week 1, like a guy who's going to get, 80% of the touches. They may want to give Ramondre and Antonio Gibson a little more work than that, but I still like the talent. I got to put him at number 5 over all these other guys. Now, let's get to these other guys, Pat, because there's a couple that I want to talk about. Other notables. These guys are not guys that crack the top 5 for immediate redraft value, but these are guys that could absolutely have redraft value if things break right, and certainly have dynasty value. So these are just some of the other notable running backs. First, Caleb Johnson, drafted in the 3rd round. Just a case where he'll probably be more fun to own in future seasons. He could break out this year if the Steelers, sign Aaron Rodgers and actually give him the right amount of work to allow him to be a fantasy asset, but I just think Arthur Smith's going to muddy things. Now for the main event, Pat. Bay Shul Toot Toot motherfucking Tootin'. I am going to talk about this guy egregiously throughout the offseason and into the fantasy season because we were asked, Pat, in a viewer question, who could you see being this year's Bucky Irving? Now, normally I hate those questions because we don't have copy-paste of certain players every year. It's irresponsible to ask it. But if, gun to my head, I was forced to give you this year's Bucky Irving, I told the beautiful people of America and the brand coverage viewership that it was my guy, Bay Shul Tootin'. And Pat, what happened since then? Bay Shul Tootin' went to the team with the guy that coached Bucky Irving. And what else happened? He went to a depth chart that has a guy that I basically feel the exact same about as I did Rachaad White last year, which is that he fucking sucks and needs to go away, and that's Travis Etienne. So, if there were ever a chance for this, if there were ever a chance for history to repeat itself, it is going to repeat itself right there down in the beautiful county of
Duval
with my boy. So, Bay Shul Tootin', Pat, I'm going to talk about him a lot for the next several months.
We're going to be tooting with our big loads.
Look, memes aside, this is a guy that has a real chance to get a good amount of work in this backfield. I think, if not early, by the second half of the season, because Etienne and Tank Bigsby are just not guys that have produced the way that we would have hoped the last couple of years. Etienne had a great year 2 years ago, but different guy now, seemingly. And Tank Bigsby just hasn't broken out. Now, new coaching staff, they draft their first running back, and it is a guy who his play style is that he is just dynamic, electric, speedster. He's been comped to Raheem Mostert with his play style. I'm in love just with the landing spot. He is going to have to jump Etienne and Bigsby. I'm not going to say that is like an easy thing to do, even with the circumstances at hand. But I do think it's possible, and he's a guy who I'm going to be throwing lots of darts at in fantasy in the later rounds. So Bayshul Tootin, toot motherfuckers. Cam Scattaboo to the Giants, Jaden Blue to the Cowboys, Phil Maffa to the Cowboys, and Kyle Monangai to the Bears, just guys who ended up on teams where I think they'll have a decent amount of opportunity for some touches, but just maybe not guys who are going to be really on the fantasy radar in year one. Yes, Pat, you have
my only comment on any of these guys is when I first read this, I thought it said Alfred Blue to the Cowboys. That's all I have to say about it. If we were to do another random running back draft, maybe Alfred Blue would appear.
That is perfectly valid because I ended up with a lot of Texas games on my TV last college football season, and every time I saw this motherfucker, I thought of Alfred Blue, so totally fair. Okay, moving on to the wide receivers, the best wide receiver landing spots and their pseudo redraft rankings for fantasy football. Maybe some debate about number one, Pat, but me personally, I have Travis Hunter here as the best redraft fantasy receiver. Debate only because although the Jags are saying they are going to play him primarily at receiver, like, that's not a question for Ted McMillan, right? Like, Ted McMillan's playing receiver. He's going to play 90+% of the snaps.
He's playing corner.
He's going to play 90+% of the snaps on a weekly basis in a pretty good offense with a quarterback who took a step forward last season with Bryce Young. But Travis Hunter, I'm just betting on the talent. I'm betting on the fact that he's going to play enough on offense, even if it's only 65-70% of the snaps. And with Liam Cohen, I hesitate to say Trevor Lawrence like it's a positive thing because he hasn't really merited that in a while. But the situation Travis Hunter's stepping into and just his insane talent profile, I would be willing to draft him as the first rookie receiver off the board in redraft fantasy leagues. Are you on the same page, or were you more of a tech guy?
I think so, just from the fact that, they did trade up for him and gave what they gave them. And like you said, the workload may not be there the way it is for Tet, but you can tell that Liam Cohen and friends are going to draw plays up for Travis Hunter. They're going to make sure when he is out there that he is getting involved, and we've seen what this kid can do. Because, think about it, say he was just a wide receiver, does he go this high? Maybe not, but at the end of the day, he's still an electric player, and I just think the fact that, again, Jacksonville, Liam Cohen can turn this around. And we still want to see something out of Trevor Lawrence. Like, I'd say there's a better chance of the Jags being, like, a really good offense than the Panthers.
Yeah, I think that's fair, just given the changes that they made. You got a new GM in Jacksonville. You got a new coach. There is reason to believe things will be different in Jacksonville for the first time in a while, and I think Travis Hunter is maybe the face of that. And look, this is a guy, like, it's going to sound crazy and over the top, but like, Pat, this is a guy that's been comped to Justin Jefferson in just the way that he moves and the ridiculous sort of hand-eye coordination he has. And I think had he played receiver in college full-time and didn't play corner, I think there would be more people willing to say this is the next great receiver in the NFL. I think the ambiguity of what position he's going to play, how much he's going to play it, has forced people to be a little more lukewarm with their opinions of him. But I am willing to take a stab at Travis Hunter as the number one receiver in fantasy, both in Dynasty and in redraft. Tet McMillan, number two. Pretty obvious, just the highest draft capital spent after Travis Hunter, going to a team that apparently didn't like the ex-receiver they had with Xavier Legette, so they are going to put Tet McMillan in that role. Again, the receiver class is not as good as the running back class, so I am not necessarily expecting many, if any, rookie receivers to be like super productive right out of the gate to where you're starting them in fantasy football. Tet McMillan included in that, but I do think he is the second best of the class, just because they're going to feed him, Pat. 8th overall pick is no joke in terms of capital, and I think they drafted him to be Bryce Young's number one target, so I got to put him at an easy number 2.
Yeah.
Matthew Golden at number 3. Again, this one is pretty chalky just in terms of the draft capital spent on most of these guys. One notable omission, not emission. He's not fucking gas fumes. Is Emeka Egbuka, who we'll talk about in a second. But Matthew Golden I have at number 3. Not a guy, again, that I'm like super jazzed about drafting myself in fantasy, but a guy that if you're going to draft a Packers receiver, I think it's probably got to be the Rook, just because these other guys have not shown a penchant to be consistent enough to be fantasy assets. And now you've got a guy who was the first one the Packers have selected in the first round in 20 years. So you know they're going to get him involved. They're going to make a concerted effort for him to be the number one target. And if it's not him, it probably will be Tucker Kraft. So, like, I don't think I'm interested in any of these other Packer receivers. If you are looking to take a stab in the Packers receiver room, I think it's probably the rookie.
I would say so as well. Like, we've seen Jaden Reed, be able to produce with what he's given, but at the end of the day, oh God, sneeze coming.
Oh God, emergency.
Okay, hopefully there's not another, because I'm not muting again no matter what. But we've seen Jaden Reed be productive in what he's given, but the problem is he's not the kind of guy that's going to get a huge share of targets on a weekly basis. That's going to be this consistent force. He's going to be involved for sure, but then you look at like Dontavian Wicks and Christian Watson's hamstrings and Jordan Love's bathtub mate Romeo Dobbs apparently. But while these guys don't necessarily have a ton of value on their own, probably, I still think Reed has some decent value. It's all just going to be a big mess. And throw Tucker Kraft in there as well, who we saw be involved a lot last year. That's maybe take Wicks out of the equation. That's still 4 guys. And then they're going to run the ball a good amount, too, with Josh Jacobs, as we've seen. So the offense is going to be good enough where it's like, yeah, this could maybe work, but I'm not thrilled about any Packers receiver emerging, even more so than the Bears. Like, I think we're more likely to see a guy emerge from the Bears than the Packers.
I think that's fair. My number 4 receiver is Jaden Higgins with the Texans. Texans had, a pretty, I won't say huge need. We like Christian Kirk. We thought he could be a thing, but they still had a pretty big need after the losses of Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell not being expected to play this season. Jaden Higgins is the guy they ended up spending a very early second-round pick on, the second pick in the second round, so clearly have some plans for him. Again, wouldn't be surprised if anybody, Jaden Higgins and on down, doesn't really have super big contributions in fantasy in year one, but just for posterity's sake, he would be my next best bet because he's going to be lining up next to Nico Collins with no other real pass catchers that you're super worried about if Jaden Higgins is able to adjust to the NFL quickly. He's not going to have a ton of competition to deal with. So I like Jaden Higgins. I think as far as, looking for receivers that could have a role week one, he is as good of a bet as you're going to get outside of these top 3. So I got Jaden Higgins at number 4. And then finally at number 5, Pat, Trey Harris with the Chargers, the 23rd pick in the second round. We talked a lot about the Chargers needing some more weapons. We thought they would spend their first round pick on a pass catcher. They did not. They spent it on Omarion Hampton, which allowed them to spend it on a pass catcher in the second round, that being Trey Harris. So I think he's got a really solid path to production in year one. Debated putting him over Higgins, decided not to do it just because they kind of found themselves in similar-ish situations where they're stepping in with one other real receiver on their team, really good gunslinging young quarterback. But I opted to put Trey Harris slightly lower here. But I do like him potentially for year one and especially in dynasty leagues.
Yeah, we saw the Chargers try to get Quentin Johnston involved, God forbid. And even Will Dissly had a bit of a run there in around November where he was pretty involved. So, yeah, there's obviously a path for Trey Harris to be involved. And again, what we think should be a pretty good offense, albeit a run-first offense, but...
Absolutely. Other notable receivers and their landing spots. Again, the only first rounder we did not talk about, Emeka Egbuka, just not going to be on the radar in year one. Just not on the radar in year one unless there's going to be an injury. So just not really looking at him. I mean, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and then even Jalen McMillan. Too much going on there in Tampa. Even Cade Otton, too much going on there in Tampa Bay to be interested in him in year one. Love him as a stash player, love him going forward, but year one, it's just not going to happen. Luther Burden, sort of a similar situation, like him in the long term. Don't like him to have his own redraft value unless there is some kind of injury. Just too many pass catchers ahead of him. Do you know if this is pronounced Beck or Besh? I heard someone say Besh. I looked at it like Beck. It's Jack Beck.
Oh, I thought it was Beck.
I thought it was Beck too. I don't know. Jack from TCU on the Raiders. Somewhat notable, seemingly has a role in Vegas.
I was going to say, I think I like him better than chat bias in the chat.
Bias!
But just again, the fact that this offense could be very stinky poo-poo. We know that. But with Geno Smith, the floor gets raised a bit. And this team last year was exclusively Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. And that was out of necessity. They really didn't have many other places to turn. Besides those two, the next guy they brought back was Trey Tucker. So you think that Jack from TCU...
It's Besh, I confirmed. It is Jack Besh.
Jesus,
it's
well,
Besh.
Look at us. Aren't we just fools?
He's the best.
He's the best. But I think he slides right into a starting spot, and I think just the question is going to be, can this offense be enough for the number 3 target to matter? And if that's the case, then I think we're looking at a solid piece. But I also think we're looking at a scenario in which that's not the case.
Yeah, and I mean, again, in a weaker receiver class, Pat, you look at anybody who's drafted in the late second and beyond, like, even the capital itself doesn't necessarily suggest immediate contributors. So we don't want to get too lost in the weeds of just all these guys drafted because the draft is the only fucking thing going on and we're just NFL addicts. Kyle Williams, 5th pick in the 3rd round to the New England Patriots. Absolutely in love with this pick. Patriots need receivers, but another guy that there's a lot of sort of dudes in the Patriots receiver room. So look, he has a chance to be, I would say, the 2nd highest target earner behind Stephon Diggs, assuming Diggs is healthy, but he also has the chance that he is more of a slow to come along player in the Patriots system. So one to watch for sure, but not one that has any sort of guaranteed value in year 1. And then Jalen Noel with the Texans. This is strictly about, I guess, if he can jump Christian Kirk, which is possible. But, 3rd round capital isn't nothing for a team that needed receivers. It's just they drafted him around after Higgins, so we would be stupid to expect anything more from Noel than we expect from Higgins. We should be expecting a decent amount less from Noel in year 1. The tight ends, Pat, to round things out, the best tight end landing spots, I actually have Colston Loveland at number 1. This might be controversial because Tyler Warren has, I don't know, I mean, not another tight end to compete with at the very least is the best way I can put it.
Put some respect on Mo Alley Cox's name.
I will do no such thing. Colston Loveland goes to a place where, picked with the 10th overall pick, a guy that, like you mentioned before, Pat, made Sam Laporta into what he was in year 1. It's just, I am not probably targeting any rookie tight ends this year, which is going to be different from the last couple of years. But if I was going to, it would be Colston Loveland because of the Ben Johnson investment and just my belief in the Bears offense in general. I don't have that kind of belief in the Colts offense with Tyler Warren.
I'll say it. There's one of these rookie tight ends that I'm irrationally ready to throw it all behind.
Is it
Pat's
Ferguson?
Pals territory. No, it is not.
Is it Taylor?
It is Mason Taylor
Okay.
with the Jets for a couple of reasons here. I mentioned earlier about how much Justin Fields loved throwing to Cole Kmet. And even in the games he started for the Steelers last year, Pat Freiermuth didn't, see anything like any spike games or anything like that, but a solid foundation. And again, hopefully this is not the same Jets with Tanner Engstrad calling the plays here. And I didn't realize this. The Jets fucking stink. Their offensive depth chart, their 2 starters alongside Garrett Wilson are Alan Lazard and Josh Reynolds.
Yeah.
Ew. And
that's bad.
you're looking at potentially an offense that could at least be creative enough from a play calling standpoint where they involve the tight end enough with a shot at being the number 2 target. You say it every year. It's all about potentially being a number 2 target in an offense. And I think Mason, I'd rather throw throw it behind Mason Taylor doing that rather than Alan Lazard or the other guy, Josh Reynolds. Yeah. I'd much rather see that. Again, that's fair. Combined with Justin Fields' history with tight ends and an offense at least potentially a little on the rise, I think he might be my favorite rookie tight end here going into this.
I think that's fair. I think there's a line we got to draw, though, between favorite rookie tight end and going to be good in year 1 in fantasy. Like, we already talk every year about how...
for year 1.
Right. No, I know. We talk every year about how it's hard for rookie tight ends to be good. Now, granted, it keeps getting fucking debunked, so I guess maybe we should abandon it. But other than Laporta and Bowers, it was really, really unlikely that you would see a tight end be genuinely fantasy relevant and not just relevant, but superstar in year 1 like Bowers and Laporta both were.
I'm not ready to call him a superstar.
No,
I'm saying
I know.
This guy will at least be... in the waiver wire consideration here,
That's
but potentially
fair,
better.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't hate spending a late round pick on the guy, like much like I did with Laporta years back, because Laporta was, I think, a second round pick in his own right. Just ended up in the perfect situation, and this could be sort of a similar thing. So I don't blame you there. I have him as my third best rookie tight end for year one. I do have him still
comes from Detroit too.
That's true. I do have him still behind Tyler Warren, who the reason I don't have Tyler Warren number one is because of all the things I mentioned about Loveland. He's got the better coach. He's got the better quarterback. He's got sort of a similar amount of competition, I would say, overall, because while Tyler Warren is the only real tight end on the Colts depth chart, he is dealing with, I would say, almost similar quality receivers as Loveland is with Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr. I like those guys personally. I don't think that's zero target competition for a rookie,
not zero.
but it's more about the fact that there's any target competition while your quarterback is Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. So I am not overly interested in Tyler Warren for year one. I have Mason Taylor at 3. I think you make a lot of good points. I was going to put him at 4 until I pulled up the Jets depth chart and was like, oh, yeah, never mind.
I was looking at all the depth charts today, and that was one where I was like, what? Like, I could have sworn they had somebody else in the fold, but apparently fucking not.
No. And then number 4, I do have Terrence Ferguson with the Rams. I think the Rams, notoriously incredibly good drafting team, them spending a second-round pick on a tight end is notable, something we should pay attention to, especially with, seems like Tyler Higbee's fading, Pat. Not only is he getting old, but he's just not putting up numbers that we have seen in the past. He's just kind of a couple 100 yards, 2-3 touchdowns a year kind of guy. I think there's absolutely room in the Rams offense for a new tight end that takes a little bit more work. Now, again, won't be a guy that I'm super invested in year one because of the top 2 target thing. The top 2 targets in LA, as long as they are healthy, are cemented, fucking written in stone with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. So not going to be super interested in him in year one, but this is a very nice landing spot for the long term. And if one of those guys were to get hurt, then we could maybe talk about Ferguson. At number 5, I have Elijah Arroyo. The tight ends were chalk, Pat. My rankings for them in redraft for this year were literally just the order they all got drafted in the NFL draft, but that's because, tight ends, they don't tend to stray too much from what the capital actually says. But Elijah Arroyo, 18th pick in the second round. Seahawks have already thrown around the idea of using him as kind of an X receiver. Only has to deal with Noah Fant as tight end competition, which, Noah Fant's going to have the job over him to start out for sure, but there is still some room to get some playing time in that Seattle offense that is going to be looking for weapons beyond, JSN and Cooper Kupp. Did they draft? They didn't draft a receiver, did they?
I don't believe so. I believe it's just those two and Jake Bobo.
Oh, Bobo, yeah. So, which again adds to kind of my point about Arroyo. So that's why I have him at number 5. Let me just confirm the receiver thing. They drafted Torrey Horton in the 5th round out of Colorado State, and then Ricky White in the 7th out of UNLV. So not quite as high as the second round capital they gave Elijah Arroyo, and they're already talking about using him as a receiver. The only other notable I wanted to put on here is Harold Fannin Jr. He's a guy who had a good amount of buzz leading into the draft, so worth mentioning his name, but also worth mentioning that not going to have year one value in this dog shit Browns offense with David Njoku still around. It's just not.
It's pronounced dog pound.
No, it's not. Finishing out with the QB landing spots, just to touch on these, because these aren't really going to be fantasy related. I don't know that any of these guys are going to be big fantasy values on their own. Cam Ward could. Look, number 1 overall quarterback, can run the ball, could be good.
You put some respect on Tyler Shug's name right now.
It's Shuck. Like Yuck.
Is it Shuck?
It's Shuck.
Oh, I thought it was Shug, and I liked that much better.
It's like shucking corn. No, it's Tyler Shuck.
Oh, that's stupid.
So just to touch on their landing spots, Cam Ward to the Titans, which we knew. Jackson Dart, the Giants ended up trading up for him, which we will see if that ends up being the right move. I like that they got Abdul Carter and then got a quarterback later. So theoretically, I do like that, but we'll see if Jackson Dart ends up being a guy. Because, look, he's stepping into a place where, he could start year one. And I don't know if that's going to work out in his favor. So I wanted to see him go to a place where it was like an obvious sort of sit situation, like in LA, but not in the cards. Tyler Shuck to the Saints. He actually might start in year one. But I don't know, man. If you're thinking about drafting Tyler Shuck in fantasy, you might need to go to rehab or something. Dylan Gabriel and Shadore Sanders to the Browns. Either one of them could also start because that quarterback room is disgusting. And then Jalen Milroe to the Seahawks is more of a long-term fun thing. Granted, would it shock anyone if Sam Darnold lost his job and Jalen Milroe ended up starting second half of the season? No, it wouldn't shock me personally. And then Jalen Milroe is the most interesting fantasy asset, if that were to come to pass, just because of the rushing. So,
and they did trade Sam Howell, so he's clearly the backup here. So, yeah, I agree.
So that is our coverage of the draft, folks. We hope you enjoyed the NFL draft. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Again, we will be back here next week, same time, same place, same sexy faces and beards, and we'll be talking about, I don't know, Pat, whatever transpires over the next week. We'll see if free agency gets buzzing again, like I mentioned, because this is going to be the most loaded show we've had in a while, and will have for a while.
Yeah,
but maybe we do a little draft of our favorite rookies for fantasy, kind of talk about them in a different way next year. We could get into some of that. But folks, for this week, for Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon Carney, and we'll see you next time.
Get your big load backs ready. Bye-bye.
I knew that's where that was going.
Folks, we are making that happen. I don't care. We're making it happen.
Load back. And for those of you still here, we will obviously answer your questions, starting with the don't know questions first. Right here, Pat. First and foremost, GP Glazer said...
I missed this. So I put in the chat very recently, I said, has GP Glazer been here? Because I was genuinely concerned about his well-being. GP Glazer, glad you're okay. Thank you for the $1.99. I think I agree.
He was right here off rip. He said, with Will Howard, George Pickens will win Offensive Player of the Year. I agree. Will Howard was the key, clearly. Bucko with 10 said, is Dion the main problem for Shadore, as they seem to be a package deal and teams might not want that? Or was his interview/attitude just that bad as the leak suggested, loving the 12:30 a.m. start time?
Listen here, Bucko.
Fuck. I don't think we can really identify which one was bigger. If I had to guess, Pat, I think the interview stuff would probably be more of a problem than just being Shadore's kid. Because it does sound like, I mean, we're hearing from multiple places that he really was not impressive in these interviews. And it's more, everything stacks on top of each other once that becomes the case. It's like, all right, he's going to be a shitty interview. He's not that interesting of a physical talent. And we got to deal with fucking Pops over here yapping sometimes. So I think interview number one, but Pops is not out of the question as a concern.
I was going to say, I think everything together where it's just like, is Shadore talented enough on the field to be worth some of the theatrics that come with it? And I think most teams just thought the answer is no.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, clearly, they all did to some extent.
Right. They all passed on him at least 3 or 4 times.
Just like Tom Brady.
Oh, fuck, yeah. With another 5, Bucko said, apart from the obvious Cam Ward, who is the rookie quarterback that has the best chance of starting the season? I think it's got to be Shuck, right?
It has to be Shuck.
Shuck.
Is he related to JB Shuck? MLB outfielder?
He's related to Shuck Norris.
Oh, boy.
The Saints quarterback room is Derek Carr, who might get surgery and miss the year, and Spencer Rattler. So I think we got to go with Shuck, who was where did he get picked? He was a second rounder. Yeah. So with that high of a pick, yeah, second rounder, eighth pick in the second round, I would think Shuck has the best chance to start. Omega with $4.99 said nobody complained about the slide for Lamar Jackson. Teams literally asked him to switch to running back, and Lamar refused to go to the combine because of that. Buddy, there's a difference between falling 15 to 20 spots and falling 5 rounds. That's why.
Well, 1 to 5 rounds, and then again the fact that it's Shadore Sanders, that he's Deion Sanders' son, that there's all this hubbub around him. I think that's really what had people behind it. I think if Shadore Sanders' last name is Smith, if his name is Shadore Smith, I don't think anybody... Well, first of all, I don't think he slides that far, quite frankly. But I don't think anybody's talking about this the same way. And Lamar, again, just a historic whiff on the guy. But he was not as... he won the Heisman, but there was not this media circus around him the way there was Shadore coming into this.
Right. Bucko with another 5 said, what are the Rams cooking by hoarding draft picks? Also, with Kittle being 36 by the end of his new contract, are the 49ers pissing money up the wall? I mean, bro, it's the Rams. I don't question anything they do. They're probably cooking up some kind of fucking trade for somebody. I don't know what exactly that would be or who that would be for, but I think you're on the right track there thinking they're doing it for something.
By them there.
Yeah.
I thought Atlanta, they wanted their guy there, and they
got
James
a lot.
Pearson, they paid a lot for him.
They got quite good value. And with Kittle being 36 by the end of his contract, with the 49ers pissing money up the wall, yeah, to an extent, maybe. I mean, look, tight ends can stay fairly productive more into their mid-30s than, like, receivers can.
Their senior years, yeah.
I don't know why, but how old's Travis Kelce? Travis Kelce's, I think, 35?
70.
Travis Kelce's 35. He'll turn 36 this year. So, I mean, it does bring up the question, right? Because Kelce was not very good this past year by his standards. He looked a step slower, wasn't as productive, even when Rashee Rice went down and he kind of got back to the role he originally had and was more productive. It does beg the question for a guy like Kittle, who's been historically banged up a lot more than Kelce, that, yeah, the contract might not look great by the end of it, but I think part of it is paying the man what he's worth right now to keep him around because they like him and they respect him. But no, I think it's a fair question to ask for sure. Jake first with 5 said, I don't follow the Patriots. Who was Will Campbell replacing? Did the tackle get traded or released? Buddy, what tackle?
Subway turnstile he's replacing.
What tackle? Our lineman was horrific. He's replacing everybody. Nate with 5 said, congrats to Western Michigan for winning the D1 Frozen 4 Ice Hockey Championship. I know it's a few weeks late, but better late than never. Hey, man, you spend your $5 how you want. Congrats to Western Michigan. Bucko with another 2 said, Rodgers in 2025-26, on a team or retirement? I'm leaning retirement. I'm leaning not necessarily committing to retirement, but him not being on a team as things are standing. So. Seems like he's taking things a little too slow for any team to reasonably hold out for his services at this point. So, fuck him.
I'm shocked the Steelers are even still playing ball.
Yeah, Alex said, also bad for Ridley. Tennessee got Ward's wide receiver 1 from Miami. Yeah, I'm just not going to be that worried about an undrafted free agent. I think the Xavier Restrepo signing is cool, and there is a chance he, builds himself into some playing time there, but I'm just not going to take it as a knock on Ridley that they signed an undrafted free agent that happened to be teammates with Cam Ward. Lucian with $2 said Tom Grossi announcing a pick was awesome. That was awesome. I want to do that one day. Maybe if the draft ever goes to New England, we can talk. But no, that was super cool for him. Well deserved. Crappy Entertainment with $4.99. How do you feel about Marcel Reed's fall from the first overall pick to being undrafted? What? Also, Dark Sided should cover Pearl Jam. There you go.
Enjoy it.
They just did it. I don't know. Marcel Reed is Texas A&M's starting quarterback for this upcoming season, so I don't know what that means. I'm just going to move on. But thank you for the $4.99.
Marcel Reese, the Raiders fullback, he was supposed to go first overall.
Possibly. Bucko with another 10 said, with CMC saying he's got no restrictions and the green light in a recent interview, still in a Shanahan offense, 49ers using a low pick on a running back, is he worth a late second, early third round pick? Yes.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a lot in the past, yeah.
If you have the balls to make a pick like that, he is absolutely worth it. CMC is the kind of guy who I would think about picking in that range, Pat, and then I would be clenching my ass cheeks for about 7 rounds, praying I can get his handcuff whenever. Because if I don't get CMC's handcuff, assuming I think that's Isaac Guerrero right now shaping up to be, I will be shitting my pants that I potentially wasted a second or third round pick on a guy who might get hurt again and be out for the year. So, yes, he's worth that for the upside, but it's going to be a scary proposition. Jeff with another 5 said, as a Jags fan since the beginning, I'm very cautiously optimistic. Yeah, man, I think you guys are going a fun direction. I am excited for sure. Tyler with $4.99 said, love the show tonight, but I'm highly offended you would think of comparing Bayshell Tutin to our Lord and Savior Marquise Bucky Irving. Buddy, Bayshell Tutin is going to be better than Bucky Irving.
You take that back.
Right there down. We're going to be in
Duval.
Thank you, Tyler, for the $4.99. And then Alex with $1.99 said, favorite defensive rookie that didn't go top 5. Braden Swinson, because Patriots. He's going to be a fucking monster. How about that? All right, couple
Jihad
questions.
Campbell, because he got taken by the Eagles.
Couple questions from the general chat. Okay, if Ragnarok, I saw you compliment my Gunther t-shirt earlier, so I'll answer this question. Someone's got to provide some wrestling questions, so I got to ask, who's a wrestler you wish had more TV time in general on the WWE main roster? Pat can take a fucking nap while I think of my answer to this question. Someone I wish had more TV time in general on the main roster. I feel like they've been pretty good about giving TV time to the people I enjoy. Shit, man. Fuck. I don't know. I miss Ilya Dragunov, but he's hurt, so he's not like a TV time issue.
His name is what?
Ilya Dragunov?
Yeah, I'm dragging off these nuts across your face or whatever the hell. Like, that's... God, I really am 12 years old because that is just the first thing that popped into my head.
He is very Russian. Hold on. I'm going to look at the WWE roster so I can give you an actual good answer here because I know there is one. Pat's going to fucking kill himself in the meantime. Let's see. How about Carmelo Hayes? He gets a lot of TV time, but I want Carmelo Hayes to just win more. He won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, so that's a start. But I want him to be actually used like a fucking star. So I'll say him. All right. More questions. Lucian, with another 5, said Skip was as bad as Kuiper on Shadore, with less said. I mean, Skip is a fucking douche, so that's not a surprise.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would have been disappointed if he wasn't, to be honest.
Yeah. Omega with 199 said, how high would you consider drafting Henry? Is this Derrick Henry or is there a different Henry?
I think it's probably not Hunter Henry. Yeah, I'm gonna have to assume.
Just making sure there's no Henrys that I'm missing.
I would take him I would kind of put him behind that top echelon of running backs in the sense of Saquon, Bijan.
I would take him in the
Jameer
late
Gibbs.
first. I would take him
but
in the
after
late
that,
first.
I'd put in obviously my Genty glazing, which is only gonna get worse, by the way. But yeah, realistically, he's probably my RB4, maybe 5.
Derrick Henry is maybe the only guy in a long time that has beaten my my age allegations because I am willing to roster him this upcoming year if it broke right. I know. He has beaten the age allegations just because he's fucking gigantic. Pixel Fox.
He's a big load back if I've ever seen him.
He's a big load back. Pixel Fox said, as a Bengals fan, what do you think about their drafting? I'm a little skeptical, especially with Jack Sawyer going to the Steelers. I mean, I think the Bengals did what had to be done, right? Like, they focused mostly on the defense. Let me pull it up really quick just so I have it in front of me. Bengals. I mean, I like the Shamar Stewart pick. And then they went linebacker, guard, running back in the 6th round. Look, limited picks in general, but I have really no issue with it. They had to go defense because they, as much as I meme about the fact that they should just only focus on offense and literally ignore the defense, they know they can't do that. So I think they did pretty well. Bailey Reichert said Tootin is going to break Dickerson's rookie record of 1,800 yards. Facts or not?
He's not even breaking the rookie record. He's breaking them all.
I mean, that's 1,800 is lowballing it. I'm looking at 2,800 at the very least.
He's tooting through the records.
He is fucking. Sawyer said, showed up a little late. Predictions on Tyler Shuck and the Saints. Stick with him and build from him, or maybe even Rattler or tank for Arch. I mean, they're going to start him this year, I think.
Yeah.
They're going to start him this year, I think. So if he's really good, then they will decide based on that what they want to do. If Tyler Shuck is ass and the Saints are in a position to draft Arch, they'll fucking draft Arch.
Hand in hand, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I think they're just going to wait and see. They're going to start Shuck, and I'm excited to see what he can do. I don't really have many expectations for him, but who knows? Let's see.
Alex is a good question.
Favorite rookie whose name rhymes with Maysel Wooten? Bayshall Toot motherfucking Tootin.
I hate it already.
Get ready for literal years of this, Pat.
God blesses me with that amount of time.
Squeaky Clean said, should the Bills go all in on an alpha wide receiver this offseason via trade? Even getting a Waddle or Devonta Smith would be massive for them. I would if I were them, if that kind of guy becomes available, but that seems questionable. We'll see.
It's clear they don't care. Well, Brandon Beane went and threw a little hissy fit on a local radio show, and it
could have been on us. He could have hissed on us.
Where he was literally saying, like, oh, you say we need a wide receiver, and look at us, we do all this. Brandon Beane was literally saying, like, you say we need a wide receiver, but we clearly don't. So, would it make them better? Sure, but I just don't think it's going to happen based on their philosophy.
Yes. Aiden with 5 said, do you think the Seahawks could be a team to watch this year? Not particularly. I mean, look, this is the time of year where you have reason for optimism for any team, right? If you look in the right places. But no, they're not a team that particularly excites me with Sam Darnold at the helm and still a pretty bad O-line. That's just kind of
especially
where I fall
that's
with
the thing. Darnold is kind of making me a little leery of the situation and the fact that the 49ers should be back. and the Rams should be
Rams
good
are
again.
good.
It's just going to be a tough. It's going to be a tough road, but I do think we'll be talking about them at the end of the year as a team that made some strides, unless Sam Darnold turns back into a pumpkin.
Yeah. And then we'll do one more. WrestleMan with the podcast said, don't think you mentioned it, but thoughts on the prank calls, not just at Shadore, but Warren, DeJean, and others have been prank called. Yeah, it's fucked up. Don't do that. Don't like that. I know it was the Falcons' DC's son got caught for the Shadore one, at least. Yeah, man, don't mess with people on their on the biggest night of their lives. Don't do that shit, basically.
Yeah. I mean, granted, so what was it that, like, Ulbrich had the phone number accessible to his son? Like, how?
It's really not that surprising when you read about it. He had the info like out on an iPad, and his son like walked by it and saw what was on the screen and was like, "Oh, lol, Shadore's number. Let me file that away for later." And then did this.
I saw like Matthew Berry in particular, major like pearl clutching, saying like, "Oh, there should be punishment." Realistically speaking, Jeff Ulbrich should at least be getting a bit of a slap on the wrist fine for that here.
You gotta be more careful with your stuff.
You can't let that happen. And granted, nobody got hurt, anything like that. But yeah, I'm surprised they're not at least giving him like a hey. Knock it off.
You stop it.
You only get a couple more of those.
Alex at 199 said Mohamed Sanu also got prank called. Man, my poor Mohamed Sanu, my boy. I know I said that was the last question, but we did get one more really good question from Lucian, which is favorite rookie whose last name has a few letters in common with Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun? Wait a minute. He's got letters in common with Tutankhamun? That can be none other than Beisho. Do it, baby. Let's go.
I'm blinking. I'm blinking.
Pat, the real question is who's going to snipe me on Bayshal Tootin in our draft? Because
me! So you shut the fuck up!
That's very rude of you. I'm going to spend a 5th round pick on him. Fucking watch me. All right, folks. That'll do it for this episode of Brand Coverage again. We'll be back here next week with more toots and the like. But for now, for Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon Gray.
I'm going to go get a big load back and go to bed.
We're going to see you guys next week. Adios.